That brings me to the issue of insurgency.
Yes.
Because, I mean, it started off in the northeast, but now we seem to have some level, low-level insurgency in many other places. You mentioned Zamfara.
Yes.
You've been to Zamfara. There are battles going on there. There's the herdsmen, farmers thing in the north-central region. There's the age-long kidnapping that has been going on, armed robbery and so on. Given this scenario and the fact that you've established this link between the security and the plans that you have for development and industrialization.
Yes.
Then the issue of the security itself, many people have come up with various ideas, about one of which is the state police you've just talked about. But you've talked about it, but you've put a caveat.
Yes.
What other thing would you do?
Well, let me say correctly that insurgency did not start in the northeast. It actually started in the Niger Delta region. I mean, recently. We're talking between 1999 and now. And so people are, state police is not going to solve insurgency. So what we solve is a holistic security system put in place. For instance, what I would do is to separate policing from the territorial integrity of Nigeria, which is the job of the army. Part of our problem right now is that our soldiers are doing jobs that are not meant for them. You see them at parties, they're escorting people, escorting smugglers. You have to remove them from that. Let police do internal work, let the army do the external work. But most importantly, it needs collaboration, it needs equipment. You are not going to defeat Boko Haram by way of the way we are doing it. I give an example, for example, that we use, which is an anathema. You are fighting Boko Haram with open roof vans. In other countries, you fight them with armored personnel carriers so that the soldiers that are fighting them are not exposed. But we are exposing our soldiers by using Hilux vans. Hilux vans are not even an acceptable way of local policing anymore anywhere else. So we need equipment. We need to arm and train and equip our Air Force. We need to do for our Navy. We need to do for the Nigerian army, and we need to pay them properly and motivate them. I have covered this insurgency for so long. In the history of insurgency, low-level insurgency as we have had with Boko Haram, they usually should not last more than 10 years before they are defeated. The moment they last more than 10 years, you have to review your strategy of engaging and dealing with them. And partially, we're also not having the regional and international cooperation we need. Look at what happened when the Chibok girls were abducted. The US, the UK wanted to come in immediately and help because it took 4 hours for Boko Haram to take the girls to their final destination, and everybody who had a satellite in the space was watching. They wanted to help, but the Nigerian government did not believe that an abduction had taken place. And when they were dilly-dallying, the president thought it was some kind of political conspiracy against his next election. And that robbed us of the time to save those girls and an opportunity to have an international collaboration that would have taken care of them almost immediately, because all they needed to do was to have fired on them, lead them to them, and have immediate collaboration that would have ended it. But what happened to us later? We had to be negotiating with Boko Haram to pay them ransom, and the more they get ransom, the more you give them the energy and the power to obtain more weapons, recruit more people, and have international link that is now a major problem. They started from Boko Haram, now they've become ISIS, and they have splintered into different groups, and they are competing in terms of tough and deadliness. So these are things that would have been resolved with a kind of leadership that was clairvoyant and understood the need to nip it in the bud, have the necessary collaborations, training, equipment, and most importantly, as we found out, the corruption in the topmost levels.
That's what's supposed to be my next.
They destroyed our attempt at saving ourselves from Boko Haram and other insurgents, and of course, had criminals around the country. So kidnapping, for example, is supposed to be separated from Boko Haram, because that's the policing work that should have been done. But you imagine somebody is kidnapped from Kaduna, and somebody will drive the person all the way to Warri and hide them. And no policeman on the road will say, somebody looks suspicious, something looks suspicious in your car. Open the car, because the man is sticking out his 500 naira. Before they could say Jack Robinson, they've collected and they've driven their victims away. That is where they are not even actively collaborating in the kidnapping business, as we found out later.
Now, I'm happy, of course, you talk about corruption, and not only is it the big elephant in the room,
yes,
to borrow that expression, it's something that you have been involved in investigation and exposure.
That's right.
Over almost 2 decades.
That's right.
There is a war going on against corruption. It's been going on now for 4 years or more, depending on who you want to believe. Are we getting it right?
No. No, we're not getting it right because we're not fighting a war against corruption. And with due respect, you know, when people want to fight corruption, we shouldn't call it a war, because it's not a task force issue. You know, yes, it sounds very sexy to say we are fighting a war against corruption because corruption is our biggest problem. What you do is to institutionalize ways of nipping corruption in the bud before they start, and that's why I have, you know, written extensively about it. I follow the money. I followed the money for 12 years through Sahara Reporters, and in some cases followed money from state government houses, federal government houses, guest houses, into where they buy jets with them. These are things that could have been nipped in the bud if we actually put in place things that could have ended the corruption before they happen. Because even in the US, the moment corruption takes place, the cost of recovering process of corruption can be very, very tedious and laborious, legally speaking, because the people who are corrupt will have access to lawyers, you know, some of the best lawyers, and the lawyers will come and do their job. There's nothing you can do about it. But over here, it's the same thing we needed to do. You know, we should have ensured that people just can't take money away. You know, they introduced laws here that you can't take more than a certain amount of money out of the bank, but that's applicable only to the poor people. When rich people want to take out money out of the bank, they use bullion vans to just drive them out of the treasuries, and they do the counting later. So when you have people have access to your treasury that way, you can fight against corruption. So you now have reduced the anti-corruption war into storekeepers and looters. So we are the people at the store, you people are the looters. But what we found out is that, you know, some people looted the stores at, you know, during the first era, and the other ones came, repainted the store in the front, they put the security guard there, opened the back for their own people to be looting. That's what they call anti-corruption war. How did they do it? Look at everybody that went to APC. The moment you are in APC, you are sanctified. The moment you're out of APC, suddenly your corruption dossier makes it to the surface. So that tells you there's no war against corruption. And I mean it categorically, because not only have I worked fighting corruption as an individual using the media, new media in particularly, I have also worked closely with the EFCC over the years. With every EFCC chairperson, have somehow worked, even the ones that I disagree with. I've made sure that I had a commitment. I know what happens internally with political interferences, the fact that you can't get anybody prosecuted until you go to the villa, and, you know, the villa people said it's okay, or they will supply names of people that should be prosecuted for political reasons, or names that you submit, they say, well, this one is on our side, wait, you know. And all those kind of interferences are not going to help anybody to fight corruption. The other thing is that we are not delivering consequences on corrupt people the way we should. We are not even at all doing, except for political reasons. You know, in the US, just over Halliburton bribe alone that happened in Nigeria, the US made several billions, I don't know the exact number of billions, but because they were jailing individuals, seizing their assets, and the companies that were involved, they were making them pay hefty fines. That's delivering consequences, so that anybody who wants to do that in the future, and they keep strengthening their legislation, you know.
But we do that here too. I mean, where people are having their houses seized, they're having ships seized, planes, and all of that.
But the fact here is that you can't locate the records of what we are seizing. You only hear that houses have been seized. There was a time they said they would name all the people who they took money back from. Have you ever seen it? No, we don't know. They're just playing with our minds. And that's why I said there's no war against corruption. In the US, even when you are pleading, you know, innocence, or you're pleading
guilty,
or you have a plea deal with the Justice Department, in this case, the Ministry of Justice. There has to be documentation to say this is what you said, and it can be made available to the public. They might seal it for a while, but they can make it available so that if anybody is looking for documentation about what you seized, what you pleaded, and what you said, it will be available to the public. We don't have that here. That's why I'm telling you that it's a joke.